Well, good afternoon, Alex. How are you?
I'm well, sis. Happy Juneteenth, a federal holiday.
Juneteenth. I am so excited that you're here with me for Confidence Conversations.
Thank you for having me.
It's an exciting time, and we have a lot to get into today. So I want you to start by telling me, what does confidence mean to you?
Confidence means walking through this life without fear, being clear of your vision, and people gravitate towards that. And that's what it really means to me, is being clear in who you are and showing people that clarity, because it really rubs off on other people too.
It does. You know, energy is transferable, it's contagious. And so when you have that sense of clarity within yourself, like you said, it actually empowers other people, but it also gives them a sense of who you are. But I want to know, did you always feel sure and clear on who Alex Williams was?
Yeah, I come from a Caribbean household, and if you know anything about Caribbean people, we are the most confident folk, even if we don't know what we're doing. And so that definitely rubs off on me. When I was a child, I was a bad stutterer. I stuttered every other word, and one of the things that my speech therapist told me I had to do was talk to strangers.
Mhm.
And that was at a very young age. I was 8. And I make it a practice even today to talk to strangers and elevator pitch people. And it has really informed the confidence in being able to speak to people.
Yeah. And you're right, so right, in the sense that you sometimes have to face your fears or your weaknesses head on in order to conquer them. Because a lot of times those are the very things that we want to shy away from. We want to keep those underneath the surface. We don't want people to know. But that's not how we work through them. To work through something, you literally have to go through the fire, through that thing, and conquer it that way. You can't go over it or around it. You have to go through it. So I love that you shared that piece of your story.
Yeah, I mean, I was always told by my grandparents that melanated people are this color, not just because we are able to absorb the sun and our hair defines gravity, but because we are we are strong in a way that is unique to us.
Mhm.
And we hold the vestiges of our ancestors not as bondage or baggage, but as clarity in your path. And I always remember that I am supposed to be my grandparents' wildest dreams.
Yeah,
And that's why I walk.
I love that. And you walk strong with your head held high. But I want to know, what was your journey to get there? Because we go through bumps and bruises along the way.
Girl, how long do you have? I will give you the abbreviated version. My life's work has been at the service of people. And I had started in home healthcare, doing surgical recovery, helping people just basically get out of the bed and all of that. And then I moved to working on an ambulance. I worked on an ambulance as an EMT for 10 years. I also worked as a EMT, a home birthing doula.
Oh, wow.
So I did that for 40 births. I will send you a picture to post. One of my births just turned 9, and I went to go and see her, and we talked about Juneteenth. It was really fun. So
Yeah.
there's a really cute snapshot of her when she was 6 months old and yesterday. And oh my gosh, we tried to reenact her sitting on my lap and me giving her a kiss. She's just too big.
Yeah.
She's taller than me, which is insulting, but um, it's been a journey. And then during that time of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my career, you, just like me, we started to see these names: Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown. We can't even name them all. There's not enough time.
You actually wanted to be a cop before you went and became a CEO.
I
So
was a
tell
cop.
me, yeah, you
Yeah.
were a
So,
cop. Tell
so
me
yeah,
that.
I started to see those names. And, you know, we know, because our history has always told us about Tulsa and Emmett Till and all of these terrible tragedies where people were murdered by the hands of the state. And when we started to see these names in the early, 2010s, I wanted to do something proactive. Now, I am the grandparents of Black Panthers, right? They came here to California in the Great Black Migration to work and become entrepreneurs, but they're very much rooted in their community, and joined the Panthers and did all these amazing things. So can you only imagine being a granddaughter of them and coming home to my family and being like, gonna be a cop, guys.
Yeah.
I'm gonna solve
that conversation go.
Not well at all. And so what I had to do for resolve within myself is, what does it mean to be a liberal Black queer woman and go into a profession that not only doesn't want me there, but actively works against getting people like that in to that kind of fraternity. And so I went to the police academy. It was the best, scariest, hardest, racist, clarifying 6 months of my life. It's interesting that for 6 months, I learned how to use a handgun every week. We only had about 2 weeks of de-escalation and 2 days of community diversity. Mm-hmm. And these are national standards. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to take everything I learned. I'm going to get into the police department. I'm going to keep my head down. And when I get myself up in rank, I'll be able to affect change, because we'll be able to put these minor little policies in place that could really change what was happening. And shocker, I got into the law enforcement, I got into these departments, and I started to understand what was happening. And it was very, very quick that I recognized that they didn't want to have a conversation about restorative justice. There was no conversation about what happens when you detain someone and you take their liberty from them. And there was more of a conversation of quotas and getting things done in that direction. And I will always say the universe puts you in everywhere where you need to be. Yeah. And one night I went and I went to a wrestling match. I was a wrestler, and I tore my shoulder during that wrestling match. And I was wrestling a guy who was 80 pounds over my weight class. I don't say no to a challenge. I did win. But in winning, I threw him over my head and tore my shoulder. And when I tore it, I couldn't reach my arm over here. And so that really put me in danger for my law enforcement career and really all my sports and everything. So I really had no understanding of what I could do. And it was around that time that I was counseled by some very smart female law enforcement officers who told me that I'm probably what the future of law enforcement should be. That I am what should be asked. The questions that I'm asking should be the questions that we ask. That we should be. My main questions were, why aren't we having more of a proactive conversation over low-level crimes? If we have a low-level theft that happens, how can we facilitate restorative justice? If we have a person who stole something or has assaulted someone in a minor capacity, is there a way for us to sit them down and find a resolution that does not end in a punitive damage to the person's record? A lot of people commit crimes because of addictions and because of socioeconomics that really our society has either let happen purposely or have fallen by the wayside because we refuse to fund programs. We are not all given bootstraps when we are born. A fraction of us are, and they don't look like us. So when we don't have the resources to upward elevate like society expects, and crimes are committed, we have to think about the intergenerational trauma and the history of those communities and why this crime actually happened. It's never in a vacuum. It's never in isolation. So can we have a real conversation about why? And they didn't want to have those conversations because they're hard. They're not easy. And I never claimed them to be easy, but if we can start having them, then why we won't kill so many people.
And it's also the piece, one of the reasons why it's hard is because it causes you to self-reflect and think about how you may have played a part in either what's going on or how you may have benefited from the system, and have that lens of, okay, what is my privilege? And that privilege sometimes comes with a ping of guilt. And so people do shy away from those conversations because they don't want to be associated. But when we look at it, like you said, there are cycles. And history repeats itself over and over again unless there is an intervention. And that's exactly what we need, is an intervention to say, okay, no, there are programs in place for you to eat, have support for your educational needs, for parents to have childcare for their kids so that they can go off and either work or go to school, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think we take the shorthand by putting our hands on people. A lot of things can happen by just talking to them. And I don't pretend to understand that we are in a situation where we can spend a lot of money to do this. I know that it takes a lot of processes, but we have to start somewhere. We have to do this. And the backlash that I kept getting from my colleagues was, well, this is not how it works. I'm like, I get that. And this is why it's not working. And it hasn't worked. Like, we just hit the anniversary of Nancy Reagan just say no, when we really, really bit down on drugs. And as we know, all that did was hyper incarcerate Black and brown people at high rates. It did not rehabilitate anyone. And now we have corporations and people who are not of color who are making billions of dollars on marijuana, and you still have somebody serving 30 years for something I can now buy overpriced at a store. It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. And they didn't want to have this conversation. And one of the scariest, most real and best things that someone ever told me was elders in my life. Black female officers sat me down. They said, listen, you are probably asking all the right questions. You should be the future of what law enforcement looks like, but it will never happen. And if you continue to push, you won't be here too long. And they don't mean like working there. They meant dying, because it will be a day, they said, that I'll be working on the beat and I'm going to be running into someone that I can't talk to. And they're going to put their hands on me and I'm going to need help. And I'll call for that help. And they said that the help might not be there on time, but that I would be buried like a hero, like everybody else. And they didn't say it as a threat. They just said it as like almost a guarantee, because that's how things get taken care of sometimes in that kind of department. And I was in disbelief for a little bit, but it was real. And it was the best thing that they could have told me. And it was right when I had tore my shoulder. And that's when the shift in my career happened, which is, it's a crazy thing to say out loud, but that's real. And it happened, and it got me out of that thing.
And it's incredible too, because you really do get what you need when you need it at the right time. There are no mistakes, even the bad stuff, the injuries of your shoulder, those are all coordinated for your own future and for your destiny. It's all a part of your path. And so I want to talk about how you worked on healing yourself and the interventions, and how it led to Holistic Hyperbarics today.
Again, sis, we don't have all day, but I will say that it was a very dark time. I felt like an alien when I was a law enforcement officer. Everyone thinks like the uniform's hot. It's hot, but it's hot in a weird way. And the truth of what it is that the origin of law enforcement in this country was to control slaves, which was hilarious, because when I went through law enforcement training, they told us the origin came from the Bobbies in England. No. Started in slavery. And to be a part of that was a lot. And actually the first thing I did was I bought a plant. When I decided to end my career, I bought a plant. I had never had a plant before, but I was at the store and it was like on the sale rack and it looked so sad. And I was like, you buddy, you. And I bought it. I brought it home. I still have it. And it was, this might sound super cheesy, but the ability to just affect change in this little thing started a lot of change in myself. I went to the doctor for my shoulder, and the doctor said that I would not heal probably in 14 to 16 months with my shoulder. And they gave me Vicodin and they sent me home. They're like, oh, you're young. You're fine. You're fine. It's going to be fine. And so Vicodin just makes me constipated, makes everyone constipated, and solve the problem. And I had used a hyperbaric chamber when I was a sponsored Ironman triathlete. And so I thought to myself, if this was really great for performance, which my triathlon coach would have me swim for 3 hours, give me a burrito, throw me in the hyperbaric chamber, I'd take a nap, I'd come back out, I would run another 2 hours and would feel nothing from the swim I had just did. Wow. So I knew that something was happening in this chamber that definitely could be replicated to help my shoulder. So I started looking at my local hyperbaric centers to see if I could get in somewhere. And the first lady I went to go see, I sat down with her and she, without prompting, told me that they didn't do payment plans there. And I was like, cool. I didn't ask for that. And that's pretty much how the whole transaction with her went. To speak to her, it was $375 and one session was $325. So I left there with a bill of $700, understanding that I need about 40 sessions for my shoulder to heal. And I thought to myself, there's just no way. I had money saved, but nothing like that. And it was a cold environment. I was in a room of clear tubes. I was in my own little clear tube, and I just felt really exposed, really uncomfortable. It was a very cold experience. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to go back there. Went to another one, similar cold experience. She wasn't pseudo racist, but it was just not a great experience. So I came home and I said, you know what? I'm going to buy my own. I took every penny I had and I bought a chamber, so much so that I had no money to go pick up the chamber in LA. So to get into my car, because I couldn't pay for the shipping. Yeah. The shipping was $600. And so I drove to LA and I picked the chamber, I brought it home, and it was wonderful. I used it every day. And after 3 months and 3 weeks, my shoulder was completely healed. And after 5 months, I was back to lifting my weight plus 20% over my head.
Oh my goodness.
Then I started talking about it on Facebook, because if I had a physician that was saying 14 to 16 months,
right,
in a fraction of that, I healed my shoulder, what crazy magical device is in my apartment right now? And so I started talking about it. My friends started coming over, and I love my friends. They're wonderful, and they were healing from all kinds of things, right? One person came for surgical recovery. One person came from Lyme disease. One because they were in a motorcycle accident and they had amazing healing. And then they started talking about it, and people started coming to my house who were friends of friends. And then at some point I had no idea where they were coming from. And I make this point a lot because I think it's really important for you to know, is that at the time I lived in East Oakland. It's not quite the place where you like knock on the door asking for flour. So right, when you have people coming from East O who don't know your name, don't know exactly what this device is, yeah, but are in pain and are looking and hungering for a different answer, it's a trust exercise more than anything I've ever seen in my life. I wasn't charging money back then. I would just open the door. They would say chamber. I would say, it's over there. Hop in. I showed how to use it.
Oh, come to my humble abode.
I mean, pretty much, right? The bathroom's right there. Chamber's in this room. When you're done, wipe it down and go, right? It was kind of this community thing that sprung out of nowhere. And it got to the point where I had to go to work, right? Like, yeah, I had to do other things.
So I would the chamber.
Well, I would just leave. I would leave my key in a box.
Oh my God.
And strangers would just use the key. God bless my wife. And so after about a month and a half of this, I talked to a couple of my friends and I was like, I think I have something weird happening at my house. Like 10 to 15 people are coming to my house for this thing. And they're like, really? And they came and used it. And the next day, both of them invested. And they invested a small amount of money and we started the company. And we started with that tiny chamber that I had in my room. And then it has grown hand over fist for the last 4 years since then. We went from one chamber that was not medical grade to now 4 chambers that are all medical grade. Went from me just working to now a strong team of about 15 people. We make about 100% of our net every year. And in the first 2 years, we tripled our net. So we have been growing hand over fist since then. And now we're at the precipice of a lot of big things. So that's where we are right now. And the practice itself has been less of a meditation on the actual science. The science is easy, get in the chamber and breathe. But what has set us apart and what has made us where we are today, which we are the highest and most reviewed hyperbaric center in the country. We are the only Black-owned hyperbaric center in the country. And we are some of the busiest. And we are this way because our focus is on the patient. When people call me, I stop what I do. And I'm on the phone with them however long it takes for them to feel like they've been heard. When they come in to see us, they see themselves reflected in the staff. Everybody looks just about like me. And it's really important because that's the community that we serve. So I want people to see themselves reflected in the people who are caring for them. The whole place is curated for a relaxing experience. From that one plant that I bought, I have over 300 in our facility because it blooms into life and people love to see it grow. And it's really been healing for me. And so everything we do is rooted on how we care for people. When they come to see us, we're on the phone with them. We give them a welcome packet with a bunch of goodies and advice for them to take up to take most advantage of their care. We have a strong referral system for a network of practitioners, including surgeons and acupuncture and massage and all of those. And everything we do is research-based. So we're not selling potions. Everything we do has to come from the research. So our ethos is we are a spa-like atmosphere rooted in research-based practice and wrapped in everything we do to make you feel like you've come home when you come and see us. And because we are strong on that, we're succeeding and we're right at the precipice of huge things.
It's incredible. And, it really goes back, the way that you describe your business goes back to the point that you made when you described what does confidence mean to you. You're very clear in how you want for all of your customers and clients to feel when they come in. And you're very clear on the mission and who you are as a business owner. And so that translates to the experience that you provide within your hyperbaric centers, which is amazing.
Thank you. I mean, I think that we live, I want to make sure that people feel like we know what we're doing. It's a new modality. And can I just speak from, I'll always speak from a Black experience, that we don't surrender ourselves, our beings very often, right? We do on an airplane because we all do, right? What's the social contract there? I'm going to come in, I'm going to act right, I'm going to put my seatbelt on, and you, pilot, are going to take off and land this thing without a problem, right? But outside of that, we really make sure we have ultimate control of our bodies and our experiences. And so in my place, I'm going to put you in a chamber and I'm going to increase the amount of pressure inside that chamber. And most people, especially people of color, are like, you're going to do what? So it's really important to have that confidence when they do come in and say, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And you're going to feel amazing. Yeah. And in fact, while you're inside there, no one's going to bother you. You're going to relax. You're going to feel really good. And when you get out, the problems you were having are going to be alleviated even just a little bit on the first time. And when we step into our confidence as business owners and people walking through this earth, people gravitate to that and they listen to you. And if you're thoughtful about every step of the process that your patients experience, they walk through it without any fear. It's when we're unsure, we're not clear, we don't have the answers. It's when we as primal folk are like, maybe not, maybe that's not for me. But everyone in my facility, of course, myself and other people, we're very clear on our mission and how to execute it and how you'll feel when you come in. And so it definitely rubs off. You're totally right. I tell my employees, if you feel tentative, they will not get into this chamber. So you have to approach it with the same confidence that you feel for yourself to get in the chamber for them.
Yeah. And speaking of confidence, you have a way of expressing yourself that is so true to your being. But I know a lot of people aren't able to show up in that way, telling your story as a queer, liberal Black woman in America. is something that is incredible. And especially like being a CEO of one of the most highly rated hyperbaric chamber in the US, but a lot of people would shy away in those spaces from speaking about some of the more controversial things. So how do you find it in yourself to show up and speak up?
If we are not real with who we are, people feel that, and they feel when you're not being authentic, and they feel when you are being apologetic for who you are. I am a granddaughter of Black Panthers. I am the daughter of a first generation immigrant. And I was told from birth, and my grandparents and my aunts and uncles would take their fingers and they would do this, keep your chin up. And so the trappings of who I am, my politics, are everywhere, all over my business. You know exactly who I am before you come and see me. And I don't shy away from it. I'm very, very clear, because it plays into the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we different? And I think that that's huge.
Yeah. Are there ever any times where you're not feeling confident? And if so, what do you do during those moments?
Fake it till you make it. I don't allow fear to enter a room of power.
Yeah.
Because people expect you to cower. I was just recently in a room with a lot of Orthodox Jewish men who are very, the culture is very different, right? Mm-hmm. They don't shake women's hands. And in some instances, they will not look you in the eye, right? And I've worked too hard in my life. I am the lineage of too many people who've worked really, really hard to be disrespected. But it's also for me to understand what culture means, right? So playing within those lines, but not compromising who you are. It's definitely a delicate dance, but it can be done in a way that respects everyone.
Right. Well, I love how honest and transparent that you've been throughout the course of this entire conversation. And I want to hear 3 tips that you have for people to be able to show up in their own lives.
I would say the very first thing is find your compass. What excites you? What refocuses you when you feel lost? What do you reach for? Find that compass, identify it, talk about it to your friends and family and community, and really live it. If your compass is helping people, find what that means as far as a career or volunteering, and nerd out about it. Because the more you know, the more confident you'll be about it. So that's the first thing, is find your compass and own it. The next thing I think is maybe the hardest thing for me is not letting fear into the room. When you are in a room of a lot of people making a lot of decisions, and maybe there's some words you don't understand, take notes and speak to what you do know. But do not ever let fear into a room, especially in a big decision. There's time and place for everything, as my grandmother would always say. And the time for fear is when you are alone. Yeah. And the last thing is having clear and decisive boundaries with everyone in your life is really important. I have no financial gaining on this, but I will say I've been reading this book, and it's called You Got Me Fucked Up, and it's written by a Black woman, and it's amazing. The subtitle is Creating Healthy Boundaries Without Compromising Yourself. And it is a wonderful book, because what it has solidified for me, things I already knew, was that when we're able to create healthy boundaries, even in our love partnerships, you become stronger and more confident, because you have now the ability to care for yourself as well as caring for others.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining Confidence Conversations. And for all of our listeners who are out there in California, where can they find you on Instagram, websites, and your spas as well?
Yeah, medical clinics. You can find us. The best place to find us is actually on Instagram. We're holistic_hyperbarics. That's our best place. And then we're hh-usa.com. And yes, we're in California for now. but very soon we'll be very near all of you.
So exciting. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining us for Confidence Conversations.
Thank you.